go ahead and get started with the invocation by Councilmember Tyson Hermes, please.
Lord, as the sun sets, may your love set in our hearts. A love that dispels tiredness, a love that overcomes difficulty, a love that builds relationships, a love that inspires diligence, a love that delivers excellence, a love that develops trust, a love that produces praise. Lord, may we live in the light of your love here this evening. Amen.
I now call the June 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the City Council to order. I'll ask Mrs. Hoffman to take roll, please.
Mr. Burke, Mr. Cahill,
Present.
Miss Kyle, Mr. Skidmore,
Here.
Miss Sudkamp, Miss Cahill, Mr. Meyer,
Here.
Miss Skidmore, Miss Pitts,
Here.
Mr. Nicely, Miss Reckers,
Here.
Mr. Hermes.
Here.
Thank you, Sherry. You've received a copy of the minutes for the May 7th, 2019 regular council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to be made at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion that we adopt as presented. Tyson and Tom, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, you've also received a copy of the agenda for the June 4th, 2019 regular council meeting. Are there any additions or changes to be made at this time? Mrs. Pitts?
I would like to table the text amendment for private schools, and I'd like to put it in committee on June 18th for further discussion.
Okay, do we?
So is that a motion to remove it from the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Cahill? Okay. Roll call? Roll call vote?
Well, I guess before, if we could have just a little
Any
discussion on
discussion? Okay.
yeah, on why we are looking to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what our intent there what it is. I mean, our job is to determine if this is an appropriate use of the property. I don't know what's going to change between now and the next committee meeting to help us determine if it's an appropriate use, given that the public and private schools are already acceptable uses in that location.
A couple things I'd like to discuss. One is possible removal of all schools on the text amendment. Another discussion I wanted to bring up was we just had Silver Lake built there, and we have a few other buildings built that aren't even open yet, and I would like to further do a possible, some type of study on traffic when all these open.
Yeah, I understand the one piece, but removing of all schools, we wouldn't be able to amend this text amendment at this point, right? I mean, we would still either just need to let it die or vote it down. Is that correct?
At this point, my recommendation would be to either, and not on this tabling issue, but to either die or vote it down. And if we were wanting to add something like arterial streets that has been discussed or make further amendments to the text amendment, my recommendation would be is that we put it back through the process of making an application and having Kenton County Planning Commission study it and then have the public hearing at that level on whatever that new text is. So to answer your question, I think it's possible for this council to add verbiage to this text amendment that was discussed at the public hearing, okay? We have to remember that we have to rely on the record of the public hearing at KCPC. So as an example, the issue of arterial roads was mentioned at the hearing of KCPC. I don't think that there was a discussion at KCPC of just completely removing all schools from the residential zone. So because that's not a part of the record in front of this body, I think it would be more appropriate to send that back for study. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Kind of.
Okay.
So do you think we should table it, or, I mean, are you saying, or should we just go ahead and have a vote on it tonight? And if the vote is no, as it stands, then
I mean, I think that's a different issue. I think whether to table that is within the purview of council. I mean, at the end of the day, council has to take an active vote for this text amendment to go through. The only shot clock, so to speak, would be the 1 year from the Board of Adjustments approval of this. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of residents here tonight that have emailed all of us, and we all have had discussions with residents. And I want to clarify something, and it's a little odd to do it in the middle of a motion, but I'll do it now anyway. This conditional use has already been approved without significant conditions. I know there was discussion from one of the members of the Board of Adjustments as it relates to a traffic study, but that was not a part of the motion. That is not a part of the official records of the Board of Adjustments, which is the minutes. This is what was approved. Mr. Armbruster made a motion to grant the application to construct the proposed structure, parking lot, play yard, and green garden and environmental study area with the condition that the board's approval is contingent upon city council's approval of the text amendment and the condition that the ground sign at Hulbert Avenue is a minimum of 5 feet from the front property line. So I am aware, and Mr. Hahn is, and Mr. Kramer is, I mean, we're all aware that there was discussion during the motion, the second, and the vote of a traffic study, and the suggestion that city council could do that traffic study. But that was not a condition of their approval, and frankly, it's not typical for this body to recommend a traffic study at this stage. That would normally be something that the developer would do, or would have been a condition of the Board of Adjustments. But the way it was framed in the motion, the way the minutes have been taken down, that is not a condition. So again, I don't know if I've answered anyone's question. But I think whether to table it or not is certainly within the purview of council.
So can we even ask for that now? Can we even ask for a traffic study at this stage?
I think you certainly would have the ability to go to the developer and ask for that traffic study.
Okay.
I would not necessarily make it a condition of the text amendment approval, because I think you're muddying the waters. Again, this text amendment approval is not because of this specific school. It's become a part of this specific school because the conditional use was granted prior to this body making the text amendment, okay? But I think it would certainly, I certainly think that council at a committee meeting could recommend staff or recommend to the developer to do that traffic study. But I'll be honest, I have some concerns with that because I think these are two separate issues. It's been boiled into one issue, again, because the Board of Adjustments went first. But the issue that's before this body is whether it's appropriate to add private schools within the text as a conditional use in the residential zone. A conditional use text that currently calls for parochial schools and public schools, but does not have private schools. This is a problem that PDS realized, and in the Z21 zoning fix, it's a part of the suggested adds, is to add private schools within that conditional use. Now, that doesn't mean that this school should locate on Hulbert Avenue, but that's not really in front of this body. That was in front of the Board of Adjustments. The problem is that public hearing already happened. And the only conditions they added was that we pass the text amendment and that the sign is 5 feet from the property line.
I don't know if that's where you were going with that, Mr. Meyer. I mean, part of my thought on this would be to go ahead and have the vote tonight. I mean, and honestly, I could go either way, but
Well, that's kind of where I was, is let's, I mean, I'm not in favor of tabling it. I'd rather just, have the vote on it, because our job is to look at, is this an appropriate use in that zone? And it's not just this one lot. It affects, if we say we're going to take it out of that, amend the text at a future date to take it out, we're affecting every other location.
yeah.
And then the reality is we have very, very limited arterial streets where we have, schools located.
I'm also trying to be, I'm trying to recognize that people have taken time out of their schedules this evening, and to stretch it out for another meeting seems torturous.
Just one thing I would remind council is we have 9 members here tonight. So it will take 7 votes to pass the text amendment. So I just, food for thought. Takes-
7 or 5?
It takes a majority of the entire legislative body. It's not simple majority of those present. So that's just food for thought.
Tom, did you have a question? So we have a first and a second for the tabling motion. So we need a roll call vote. We've had discussion at this point, correct? We
Yes,
need a
ma'am.
roll call vote. Corinne's motion was to table this issue and put it into committee for this month's committee meeting. Okay.
Mr. Skidmore,
I'd like to get tabled. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hermes,
Yes.
Ms. Reckers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts? Ms. Cahill? Mr. Nicely? Ms. Skidmore? Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so motion carries. So we will table this second reading, and we will discuss this at the committee meeting on the third Tuesday, which is the 18th of June at 7 o'clock. Okay. Any other additions or changes to be made at this time to the agenda? Okay. I'll entertain a motion that we adopt as presented, with the change, of course. Tyson? Rebecca? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right. So our first presentation tonight is our Business Spotlight, NKOL. If you'd like to come to the podium and hit the little green button.
Thank you. I got instructions earlier. So I'd like to thank everybody for inviting me here tonight. I got the email from David Hahn asking me to be here. I just want to say to the council, I appreciate the city and what you guys do. I get your emails. Our business is right next door. We get the emails. Just really helps keep informed with what's going on in the city. And I think you guys do a great job of not bombarding everyone with emails, but keeping us informed with what's going on. So thank you for that. I just wanted to tell a little bit about our business and what we do. We've been in business since 1996. The company was started by a friend of mine, and we started doing home computers in 96. In the late 90s, we transferred and started doing business computer systems. I came on part-time in the late 90s and full-time in 2001 after I graduated from college. My business partner started with me in 2003, so we've both been here for quite some time. And we really love what we do. We like fixing problems, and at the end of the day, that is our job. We our business IT solutions. And what does that mean? We are outsourced ITs for companies that aren't large enough to have their own IT, or maybe they are large enough to have their own IT staff, but they would like to have more people available at their disposal. If you have one person on staff that does IT, or maybe two, if they go on vacation or get sick, you can have a lot of time, it's a lot of trouble getting your problems taken care of quickly. We have a staff of 8 people, which allows us to be big enough that we're able to take care of problems in a timely manner, but we're small enough to give very personal service. We take care of all of the tri-state. We go as far as up to Columbus or Dayton. We go down to Lexington, Louisville. But we also have clients that have multiple offices down to Florida, all the way up to Michigan. Just kind of depends on their needs and what they're looking for with that. We do everything that a small to medium-sized business would need. We take care of servers, we build and repair servers, we do desktops, laptops, and like I said, just about anything that a small business would need. We like to think outside the box with some of our solutions. We had a customer come to us a while back with a problem that they had. They needed a computer in a room where there wasn't much room. So we brought and installed one of these for them. This is a full-blown computer that runs Windows 10 and Microsoft Office and everything. They had a problem that we found a solution for, and that, like I said earlier, is what we like to do. We take great pride in providing a good price for our service, but we also want to make sure that it's a good fit for the customer. I appreciate you guys being here. I brought a couple things with me today. Is it okay if I give out a couple things? Who has a laptop? No? Okay, everybody has a laptop. I brought a couple webcam covers with me. Who else has a laptop? These days is concerned about who's spying on you when you're on your laptop, right? So we have laptop webcam covers for those. Let's see, who doesn't have a laptop but has a desktop? We'll go over here. All right. Anybody else? Got some mouse pads? Okay, and who hates computers but likes to write? Anybody? Excellent. Well, does anybody have any questions for me? I wanted to be brief, but I just wanted to kind of give an introduction for what I do. Does anybody have any questions about what we do or anything like that? Yes? Like I said, our office is right next door. We're right across from the firehouse. So if anybody has any questions, we'd love to speak with you. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. Our next special presentation, I'd like to call up the Northern Kentucky Young Marines to the front.
My name is Caleb Raycamp. I am a Young Marine Private First Class.
I'm Peyton Moorhart, and I'm a private.
I'm Young Marine Private Martin.
My name is Abby Smith, and I am a private.
My name is Owen Crawford, and I'm Young Marine Private First Class.
I'm Scott Robinson, and I'm a former Young Marine Staff Sergeant.
All right. I have a very special proclamation for these guys. They work hard at what they do, and we are proud to have them here with us today. To all whom these presents shall come, whereas the Northern Kentucky Young Marines have been selected as the Division II Unit of the Year. Division II includes units from Kentucky, North Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and Washington, D.C. And whereas the Young Marines promotes the mental, moral, and physical development of its members, the program focuses on character building, leadership, and a healthy drug-free lifestyle. And whereas the Young Marines is a leadership program for kids ages 8 through the completion of high school, modeled after and endorsed by the United States Marine Corps. Chartered in 2005, the Northern Kentucky Young Marines unit currently has 28 members. And whereas the Young Marines organization is divided into 6 divisions and has approximately 300 active units in the United States. Each year, 1 unit is selected from each of these 6 divisions. From those 6 winning units, 1 of the units is selected and named National Unit of the Year at the Adult Leaders Conference. And whereas Northern Kentucky will represent Division II at the Adult Leaders Conference in Orlando this month. And whereas the Mayor of Erlanger, Kentucky, would like to congratulate the Northern Kentucky Young Marines on their success. Now, therefore, I, Jessica Fetty, Mayor of the City of Erlanger, Kenton County, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim June 5th, 2019 to be Northern Kentucky Young Marines Day in Erlanger, and do commend this observance to all of our citizens, given under my hand and the seal of the City of Erlanger on this day, June 4th, 2019. Congratulations. All right, thanks for being here, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Hahn, do you by any chance have the list for me? He's running. He's coming. Take it easy, Dave. It's okay. It's your birthday. Thank you. Okay. All right, let's get started. Mr. McClanahan.
Right there, okay. Yes, my name is Charles McClanahan. I live at 3166 Hubbard Avenue in Erlanger. I've lived there since 1964. It makes it 55 years. When I first moved there, there was very few cars traveling Hubbard Avenue, and it was a nice, clean city. But Hubbard Avenue is getting junk stuff all over it. They took out the white fence there along Hubbard, down between the long land and the library. They piled it up there just like a junk pile. Weeds, grass all growing up through it. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the speed control on Hubbard Avenue. I live just a short distance from Division. When they round the stop signs there, sometimes they never stop or never slow down. They got the metal to the pedals, so to speak, by the time they get to my house. So there has to be something done to that speed on that Hubbard Avenue, which is 25 miles an hour speed limit. You know, you don't have to give much gas to get 25 miles an hour, but they They really do it. There's no speed control or whatever. Like I said, I've been living there all these years, but it's just keep getting worse all the time. Of course, naturally, I'm not for that school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClanahan. Okay, Ms. Rosie Tuis? Okay, okay. Mr. Craig Tuis?
I know the discussion for the text amendment has tabled for the evening. I'm still going to speak my piece on this topic. Like I said, we're here to speak against the text amendment to add the private school to the ordinance in the school business that approving the text amendment would allow. With the tabling of this vote tonight at the behest of the developer provides all the proof that the text amendment and the proposed school are one and the same issue. This entire issue was started back before March by the developer who went to PDS to get interpretation of this ordinance to see if this school could be added. PDS probably said it was reasonable, and this was stated by the developer at the Board of Adjustments meeting in March 25th, 2019. With that information, the developer came and asked city administration to get a resolution before this city council to have PDS review and rule on adding this private school ordinance. On March 4th, the economic director sent a form to PDS to have them review and rule on this issue. However, city council did not pass this resolution approving this until the March 5th meeting. A letter then was sent to residents dated March 7th that the Board of Adjustment meeting on March 25th about the private school wanting the conditional use permit to build on the 9 lots on Harvard Avenue. The Board of Adjustments on the 25th gave that conditional permit contingent on the text amendment being added to the private school ordinance that needed to be passed by both Kenton County and this Erlanger Council. At that Kenton County meeting, they passed the language to allow that. The members of that board were not aware at the time of the Board of Adjustments meeting giving that conditional approval of that conditional approval of that project. Members of the Kent County Planning found this to be a very unorthodox move. On the May 7th Erlanger Council meeting, the developer's attorney tried to say that the Erlanger Council should only consider the text amendment and that the Board of Adjustments had already ruled on the school project and that they were two separate issues. So that brings us to today. Now the developer has asked the council to table this vote on the text amendment. Why? If they're two separate, independent issues, why would they ask for such a request? This text amendment is not brought up because a review of a city was not done by reviewing city ordinances and found that one particular ordinance that was done 50 years ago needed a review and update. The entire chain of events of this issue was started by the developer for the sole purpose to get this particular project built on these 9 lots. If this text amendment is allowed to pass without any additional restrictions, either today or in the future, it will open up Pandora's box for any future project that someone might try to shoehorn into a residential area. Any request to put any type of enterprise into a residential area needs to start with one question: will this benefit and serve the common good of the residents? If adding 300 or 400 extra cars on a residential street that it is not designed to accommodate is a benefit, then I guess we'll have to live with it.
Mr. Tuis, you're 30 seconds over.
All right,
Sorry.
but 2 more lines. But in the ordinance, it states that the text amendment will not have an adverse effect on the public health, safety, or welfare, and will not be injurious to the public residing or moving through the area. If the extra noise, traffic, or pollution is not an adverse effect that will be detrimental to our neighborhood, I don't know what will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuis. Tanya Ritchie? Okay. Eileen Schauber?
Okay. I am not here to downgrade the police officers of the Erlanger Police Force. but to advocate for change for domestic violence victims, so they can come forward and get out of the situation when the police, who are the first to arrive on the scene, can better serve and assist them. I'm going to talk a little bit about my issues I've had with police. I'm not going to talk about every situation because there's plenty of them. There was one instance when I was my child. I ran out of the house with her, and the officers looked right at me with a flashlight and said, "Where are the bruises?" As officers of the law, they should have first aid training and know a bruise is not going to show up as soon as someone hits me. And I feel like that's ridiculous, and they did not ask me any other questions. I got sent home, and of course, repercussions happened. They did not ask me anything about my child. They did not call CPS, nothing. Sorry, let me put it back open my phone. Other instances happened where when I first got the EPO, I was very proud of myself. It was a step forward for me. I did not check the correct box, so he did not have to leave my house right away. So the officer, one of the officers at this police station, had called my phone because I did not understand that correctly, and he had told me, women do this to get back at their exes. That is ridiculous. I was appalled. I should not be, no officer, no matter if you feel like that, no one should ever talk to any victim like that, even if it does happen. We are coming forward, and you should not sit there and tell me that, because that we need to have more victims come forward to get out of these situations. Hold on, I got more, sorry. And I felt let down. I felt like, almost like me coming to the police and calling the police is pointless. I feel like things need to change, so I've come with some proposals. So this can be, so that more victims will come forward and get out of these situations. I'm not here, I've had 5 officers since I've had a DVO that were amazing. I'm not gonna lie, they didn't do much, but they talked to me with dignity and respect and talked to me like a person. They didn't even have to believe me, but those 3 things matter to a victim. Okay, so I propose that the police take a class given by the Women's Crisis Center on how to talk to domestic violence victims and gain a better understanding of what domestic violence is and what it is and what to look for. I also propose, hold on, sorry, because I have this all scrambled in my thing. I also propose, that we do a pamphlet. That every time a domestic incident occurs and a police is called, I believe that there should be a pamphlet given with like the Women's Crisis, legal aids number. There's other ones I put in here, I'm so sorry. I'm like scrambled, okay. The hotline number, the shelters numbers, county attorneys, legal aids, the courthouse's number, and I believe they should also give out the information ahead of time. Hey, this is where you need to go, because I understand that they cannot do anything unless they see it or unless the victims go forward. But I feel like, hey, if you have an incident, go down and file an EPO Monday morning or tomorrow. This is what you can do. Because they're not going to come forward 10 times or 50 times. It might take a while, but I feel like you have to keep pushing. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. The other issue is there's a social worker up here at the Erlanger Police Department, and not once was I told about it, not one time. This is a great resource, and I feel like it needs to be utilized. So I feel like that should be told as well. Hey, I understand you're a victim of domestic violence or you're a sexual assault victim. Hey, there's a social worker up here you can talk to. Utilize it. I learned about it through my NKU social work class. That's ridiculous. So to close, sorry, I hope you take what I'm saying here today in consideration, because I got let down and I don't want this to happen to anyone else. And these little things can make a big difference to someone. All it takes is one person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schauber. I appreciate you explaining the situation to us. And what I'd like to do is be able to talk to you offline, if we can do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. And this is your contact information right here?
Yeah, I didn't put my address down.
That's okay. That's okay. But the number right here is okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. I have Thomas Tuis. Julie Tuis?
Yes, I was here tonight to talk about the text amendment for the private school as well. I guess my question is, with this being tabled, are the citizens going to get another chance to have a discussion on this? Or is this all kind of closed committee meetings?
Oh, no, our committee
Is this my
meeting
chance to do
is,
this, or?
our committee meeting is public.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that would be my chance to do that
Sure.
there versus
If you'd like to
tonight.
be able to come to the 18th.
Okay.
That is an open meeting, definitely.
And there would be no vote taken on the 18th, so depending on what's decided at the committee meeting, it would come back for a general meeting, second reading vote. So there's at least two more opportunities for citizens to be heard on this issue.
Mr. John Carney?
Good evening. My name is John Carney, and have been a resident of Erlanger for almost 10 years. We live on Center Street, where currently we have the roadway improvement project going on. We were pretty excited for that because we live on one-way little street that doesn't get much attention or traffic, and that's okay, but it's nice to have new roads. We saw that the workers had begun at the other end of the street, and the first part was connecting people's lateral lines from their downspouts into the main storm drain, because that street, a lot of us have, it would empty out into the street. It was allowed back then when those houses were built. So we thought they would get to ours. Then we came home last week and realized that the project had moved to the next phase, which was they cleared out all the asphalt, which they were done tying in all the lateral lines. Well, it just so happened that I was out there on Friday, and the Assistant Director of Public Works, Ed Milliken, was out there, and he was inspecting. And I just had to introduce myself to him, had a conversation with him, and just asked him what was the plan for our stormwater runoff, which was, it had been there since we bought the house in January of 2010. Ed said that he didn't know it was there, that he had been up and down our road several times. I'm sure a project like this takes a lot of planning, and that even the engineer had missed where ours was emptying out into the street. His proposed solution was that, that stage of the project was done. They're not going to come back. They're not going to tie in any more lines, and they're going to move forward. And his solution was that we just cut off our line and we drain it, away from the house, but we have to be 20 feet off the street. Well, most of us in that neighborhood only have about 25 feet of front yard, and that's going to put it pretty close to my foundation, which is going to have water issues. And then my neighbors live downslope from me. So if I dump all the water off of our house, it's going to have impacts on the neighborhood. He came up with another solution, pop-up drains. And I don't know anything about those until I looked in. He said that Public Works would be willing to come and put those in. The little bit that I did research, it looks like they fail. They tend to fail under snow and ice conditions. So I'm not real excited about that. What I am here tonight is to respectfully ask the city to reconsider and to go back to connecting those of us that have had existing lateral lines that drain the stormwater into the main line of the city. Not just me, there are other neighbors that might have been missed too. And if not, if we have to go the course of the pop-up drains, is the city willing to provide paperwork, documents, saying that the proposed drainage system that the Public Works put in our yard will not fail? Thank you.
Mr. Carney, is the contact information accurate here? Okay, we'll talk to you offline, okay? Thank you. Mr. John McHugh?
Yeah, my name's John McGee from Erlanger. Thank you guys for everything you do. I know it's a thankless job sometimes. Not here to complain, just want to let you guys know about something that's really a safety hazard lurking right now in Erlanger that apparently the laws and city ordinance can't seem to help with the way they're written right now. Now, this happened last Sunday night, Lori Drive, at my father's residence. I'm more or less here for my dad. About 50 yards from the entrance of Lions Park, right in the middle of Lions Festival, my dad's 13-pound dog viciously attacked by a neighbor's 50-plus pound pit bull, which was loose, hiding and waiting to pounce. They entered their house, or just as they entered their house, my dad's dog sustained near fatal injuries as the large dog swung him around and eventually took him next door, obviously probably for the kill. My dad's 77, just had open heart surgery 7 months ago, tried relentlessly to kick this pit bull during the attack and sustained serious back injuries. Luckily, a neighbor found a nearby snow shovel from a garage, beat the pit bull, finally landed a shot on the head that made the pit bull release our little dog. So, by the way, this is the second time this has happened in about a month. Last time, it was in the front of my dad's house. A guy who was walking a border collie, we don't know his name. We're not sure if there was a police report on that or not. Also, keep in mind, Nathan Connors, the owner, he's bragged many times to anyone who will listen that he spent about $11,000 in medical bills because his dog loves to attack other dogs. Erlanger PD are really familiar with him. They were called. They came to the scene. My dad left to go to the ER with his dog. No one in the family knew what had happened to the pit bull. As far as we knew, it was still in the neighborhood. Called Erlanger PD. They were busy with other calls. We came up here to the station, waited for quite a while. They finally showed up, and they didn't know the status of the dog because the officer had went off duty, which I totally get. So I was at my dad's house with my brother. We basically told this was a civil matter, which I also understand. As far as we knew, the dog was still out. I eventually talked to Sergeant Claire on the phone, informed that the dog was released to a relative that was supposed to be watching the dog. Now, I was shocked that the dog was released and animal control was not called. Now, as I would find out later, animal control being called is totally at the officer's discretion, something that is not the norm in surrounding communities. And I think something council and Erlanger Police might move to change, pretty soon. Something else to add, police were called multiple times to this address on Lori Drive with reports of animal abuse during this same week. Dog was left out for days without food or water. My dad even fed the dog. He was told by Erlanger PD, and so was I by animal control after this incident, that there are no laws in Kentucky for this type of animal abuse. Think of that. I would hope council takes this serious and gets progressive about our animal laws. Also enacts a vicious dog law. A lot of cities have those. In fact, Kentucky's animal laws, kind of from the 19th century, if you do any research, they're pretty bad. Animals are property, including your pet.
Sir, could I stop you real quick? We're going on kind of long here, but also, if I can get back with you on this and try to get more details of the incidents that you're talking about, we can get you a little more background, and the police can kind of explain.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much done. I can end real quick here. Edgewood has a great law, but anyway, I also suggest, I would just be careful walking your dog on Lori Drive. This dog is loose right now. And we're just lucky, a kid wasn't attacked during Lions Fest. Special thanks to Lieutenant Fleming, who was super helpful on helping get this done. But yeah, I think you guys need to take a serious look at, there's no vicious dog ordinance, is my understanding, in Erlanger, right? There's a leash law, is the only thing. Anybody know?
Oh, we do. We have a vicious dog ordinance. I mean, there's, and we can talk about this, as the mayor said, offline.
I know
there's a lot of statute. I mean, you gave a lot to us, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of statutes that kind of come into play, and our ordinance very well might come into play. So I believe that there are laws currently on the books that would protect this situation. So I think we just need to kind of discuss the surrounding facts and circumstances.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, Linda Ligas.
here to talk about the possible development of the Montessori school on Halbert. I was at the first meeting, the zoning meeting, where there's just 4 gentlemen up here. And the man who ran the meeting, I don't know if everybody's researched all of the meetings, but I think you should. He said, I grant this reluctantly because I fear traffic or something like that along those lines. And at every meeting that we have been at, it was like, well, you know, go to this meeting and you can be heard. Go to this meeting. And we were told last that the May meeting is when we would be heard, and that a difference could be made. And I totally have to give my hats off to Mrs. Pitts for standing up and saying, you know, just because all the other cities did it or everybody else agreed to it doesn't mean that we just go along the lines. We need to look into this. The way that everything was kind of done backwards, I think it should just be thrown out possibly even. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that's, you know. The other thing is that one of the comments when we were over in Crescent Springs or off Buttermilk was, why is this even in here? Public schools can go anywhere they want. So I agree. It shouldn't even be in the text. One of the comments we heard the last meeting was, well, from the developer representative, was the reason it wasn't in there is because they didn't exist back then. You know, everything is just manipulation and pushed it through. And I really think that some amendment needs to be made or something. This is not a public school. It's not needed. This is a business. It's not going to serve the streets around it. This is not the newer part of Erlanger where people have $500,000 homes and they're sending their kids to private school. So I do ask that the amendment be made, that it has to be on an arterial road. It also contradicts itself in where the zoning is. It says that a daycare has to be on an arterial road. Montessori schools have a daycare in them. So that's a contradiction. It can't, you know, part of what they're wanting to do isn't even allowed to be unless it's on an arterial road, according to the statutes that you guys gave us at the last meeting. Sorry, I'm trying to remember everything. We have an additional 80 signatures from the surrounding streets that agree, and just, it's not that we're against a Montessori. It just needs to be in the right setting since it will not be serving the area, but it will be turning the area upside down. It will have to enlarge the street. If you go down and you see where it exists now, the only reason the cars can get in and out is because of that third lane. It's not going to have a large enough driveway like our public schools do to handle the traffic for this road. So who do I hand the signatures into? So in closing, I just would like to thank each and every one of you for your time, and just to remember that this is our home. It's not a public school that's needed, it's a business. Thank you.
Brandon Martis.
Gosh, I don't know how many times I've been up here now. What is it, like 4 or 5? Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the moment to be able to speak. We left earlier because I guess we're just frustrated. We've been here 4 times and then this gets tabled. So I guess we're going to get together on the 18th on it again. But back to the arterial road issue. In the text, in the very item that you presented during the last meeting, item number 3, it says the proposed text amendment will not have adverse effect on the public health, safety, welfare, or cause an injurious type scenario, so to speak. And I think that might have been mentioned earlier, but Hobart is not an arterial road. And in the section 10.6 of the zoning laws or regulations, item C, it says conditional uses, and then there's 12 different topics as far as conditional uses, everything from cemeteries to family child care or family child care. But in those regulations, arterial road is mentioned 5 different times. And on those occasions, it's associated with schools or businesses that it's known to create a high volume of traffic. And that would include nursery schools, higher education, churches, and things like that. So this text change or having these things built there, I mean, if you follow your own regulations or how it was written, it will adversely affect the public health, safety of the people in the area. There's 2 different petitions that we went around and had signed for a total of about 150 signatures, so people really don't want this. And I'm just here to say that once again. So thank you for your time.
Okay. That concludes our public comment. Moving on with the agenda, the mayor's report. The only thing that I want to bring up is that we have the first reading of the small business incentive tonight. And I want to give a big shout out to the task force that has worked really hard to create this. I think it's pretty outside of the box thinking and could have a really nice impact on our city. And especially Linda that's here from Wirt Music, and Michael Stubblefield, and Joe Durrett, who are citizens and business owners in our community that have come forward and really helped us develop something special. So I appreciate you getting involved. Thank you. Other than that, the only thing I want to also say is Touch a Truck is on Thursday, and that's a pretty big, fun event in the city of Erlanger. So if you guys have kids or grandkids that want to get inside the ambulance and the fire truck and the police cars, and sometimes they even have the helicopter that comes down from UC Health. It's a pretty fun event. It's over at the Lloyd parking lot from 6 to 8 on Thursday. So that is all I have. We have the city administrator's report.
Thank you. We are still working on a permanent solution for the finance director. It's been a grueling task the last few weeks, and we'll be providing some more details hopefully over the next week or so once we work on a couple of solutions to some of our current issues. The school sign on Commonwealth today was unwrapped, and I haven't seen it on yet, but it should be powered up by now. Duke took care of that last week, so we'll, just in time for school to be out, I know. But we'll be ready for next year. So it's still a good accomplishment that we work with District 6 to make happen at no charge to the city. So that was a $25,000 savings right there, which was great. Kenton Lands Development, myself and Dave Hahn met with Nair, the developer, to ask them about the additional landscaping on the rear of their warehouse. The person we met with was going to speak to the owner. We don't have any information yet from them from that meeting, so we're waiting to hear back from them. They did say that there's a grove of mature trees that are still there, and there's no intention of removing those, that those will stay there, so that's a pretty good buffer, at least for site from that development. So once we get word back from there, we'll share that. The last thing is Ed Bailey is submitting on Friday a grant with OKI for a Commonwealth Street project. It'll be a beautification. In addition, it'll add sidewalks to, I guess, the north side of the roadway. It's a $1.4 million project that he worked on with Public Works and Jim Viox to get together, and it'll be a 20% match if approved. And I believe that project is for 2022 for the design if it is approved. So pending any questions, that's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Gatlin?
Yeah, we have two second readings tonight on the amended fiscal year 2019 budget and the fiscal year 20 budget. And then, as the mayor indicated, we have the first reading on the small business incentive. That's all I have to report at this time.
Okay, report on capital projects, Mr. Glenn?
Mayor, Council, thanks for this opportunity to talk about Public Works and our ongoing and upcoming capital projects. It's going to be a lot of stuff to go over, first time doing it, so feel free to interrupt with any kind of questions as we go along, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. Current projects that we have ongoing that are current budget year projects would be Alpha Beta, Michelle Court, and Kylie Lane. Alpha Beta they were started last fall and they have been completed. Michelle Court has just recently been completed within the last couple weeks, and Kylie is ongoing with just a little bit more concrete work and some sidewalk work, but that will be completed prior to the end of the month, which is the end of our budget year. Center Street, Brightleaf, and Atlas were also bid, and there are current projects that are ongoing. So Center Street being the biggest project of the three, with a lot of concrete work and improvements going along that street, and that's ongoing. Once that get to a certain stage, then we'll come in and overlay that with asphalt. And at that same point in time, we'll do Atlas, which will be a quick mill and overlay, and Brightleaf. All the concrete work on Brightleaf has been completed, so it's just waiting for Center Street to get to a certain point, and then we'll overlay all those streets at the same time, and that too will be done by the end of the month. Narrows Nelson. So, ongoing. So hopefully we'll get that. We're just in the restoration phase of it. We have a little bit of asphalt bike path to tie in on each side of the glades per se, and that will be done this month, and then with a little bit more restoration, and we'll tidy that up before the end of the month as well. Parking lots, for those who are visiting the city building here, we've been undergoing some parking lot improvements here, but also Safety Center East as well. So both those projects are ongoing. This is pretty much wrapped up here at this site with a little bit more work out at Safety Center East next week. Hopefully we'll be done here in the next 2 weeks. Again, this month will be done. Sidewalks, that's something that you all have committed financially to over the last couple of years. And so that's a continual project that's ongoing. So right now we have the cities divided into 4 zones, and we have completed Zone 1, and we're currently in Zone 2. So we're just now here in this upcoming week, we'll finish up with all the funding for this current budget year, and then we'll continue next budget year in Zone 2. And that'll be ongoing till we get through all 4 zones. Upcoming projects. A couple big ones. One we already have bid out that you all have approved, which would be the Turfway Road or Circle Port Drive. That will be starting here in July. We're already under contract with that. We have some upcoming asphalt overlay projects for the 2019 and 2020 budget year. That would be Lakemont from Richardson to Sky Drive. That'll be Ashmont from Lakemont to Borderlands, Sherborne, Old Turkey Foot, and Narrows Road from Brightleaf down to the pump station. So what our intentions are on that is we're going to conduct a public workshop where we contact everybody affected by all those projects to come on June the 20th here in council chambers to provide input, and we can get the word out on what the impact of all these projects to the residents. And then we'll have a bid opening on June 26th, and it'll come back before you all for approval on your council meeting on July 2nd. Those are all asphalt overlay streets. For upcoming budget year 1920, concrete replacement streets would be Woodchase, Summerwood, and Hartwood. And again, we're going to also have a public workshop for those streets, and that's going to be held on July 25th here in council chambers. We'll have a bid opening on July 31st, and that'll come back before you all for approval on your August the 6th council meeting. And that's the long and the short of it. One good thing to report, not that those are bad, those are very good, but Riggs Avenue, all the poles have been removed, all but one. So they're having a little difficulty with one, but Matt's been working on that a long time, and so pleased to report that those have been removed. And then now that they've been removed, we have a beautification project that we've been waiting on till those poles got removed that we can move forward with, and so we're going to be doing that here. We'll schedule that, with weather and everything, but that's great news. So anybody have any questions for me? All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate that.
All right.
Awesome update. All right. Reports of task forces. Are there any reports for today? Corinne?
Okay, the Erlanger Commerce Center Task Force met today. We had two discussions. One was about Tank possibly making a stop. This is the old Showcase property where their new businesses going in, and Tank is actually working with the businesses up there to have a stop up there for them, which could help with traffic a little bit, people riding the bus. The other subject we talked about was our continuing saga of semis going up Sycamore. And we had Mr. Viox come up with some plans. We're going to I'd like to call committee meeting, if we could put this in committee to discuss the ideas and questions and all that. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Meyer?
Thank you, Mayor. The Blight Task Force continues doing some evaluation of the various zones that we're looking for. Most recently, the area evaluated was Commonwealth North to Division and west from Crescent Avenue to Hulbert. 301 residents were surveyed, and there were 7 properties found to be in violation of some ordinance. 6 of those 7 we determined really fit the category of what we're looking at as blight. We're going to continue with the assessment, and hopefully after we get through the next phase, we'll start to see some additional patterns, and at that point, we'll start to look at, how do we bucket and look for solutions long-term while we continue the assessment of the rest of the properties throughout the city.
Thank you. Mr. Nicely, did you have a question?
I have a statement.
Okay.
Is it too late to talk about the private school?
We're talking about task forces right now. That's the part of the agenda we're on.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about it at the committee meeting on the 18th.
Today?
The 18th. We're going to be talking about it on the 18th at the committee meeting.
I just wanted to make a statement.
Sure.
That
Okay.
there is a gas plant storage place. They're close to Hubbard, the school, and they've got thousands of pounds of propane gas storage there. And no one's ever mentioned that as a safety factor of school kids being that close. I don't know if it's too close or not, but it is a hazard if they ever had a leak or something. And no one has ever mentioned that. And they've got thousands of pounds of propane storage underground.
Okay, would you like to bring that up at the committee meeting? I haven't heard of that issue brought up before.
I
Can-
hadn't either, and I just wondered, they came up with everything else, but if they had a explosion there, it would be a big one. And I will bring it up at the next one, but I was just surprised, though, that it's never been mentioned as much as we've discussed the school.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of that issue, considering it's right next to the most highly trafficked library in the state of Kentucky, and also Silver Lake Recreation Center. There would be quite a bit of population right there.
That is true, but would you have as much, that never was brought up, I don't think, but
Okay.
you're going to have more people in the school there. And is our fire department going to be able to handle something like this if it ever happened?
Okay, well, we can talk about it on the
Okay.
18th, okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Cahill, did you have a question or a task force update?
Actually, task force update, so we're getting RFPs ready for the facility study, so we are putting those together. One request that come my way is that if we could add the community center onto that as part of that and kind of combine those two task force.
Okay, so we would need to just eliminate that, okay. Okay, all right. And then I just wanted to give a brief summer send-off update. So we've officially changed the task force title from the Heritage Day Task Force to the Summer Send-Off. That's our official new name for the Heritage Day. I gave a pretty in-depth explanation of our changes at the last committee meeting, so I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail. But we met today to discuss sponsorship levels for local businesses and having them contribute to the cost of the event, allowing advertising and different contests of different kinds. So we're still shooting for September 19th, 2020 for the revamp, and then we'll be having the Art in the Park on September 21st of this year, in order to kind of accommodate the need for a family event on the third weekend in September. So Art in the Park at Misty Creek Park, September 21st. And that is my update. Anybody else have any questions or task force updates? Okay. Mrs. Hoffman, do we have any correspondence this evening?
I do not.
Okay, and are there any bids?
There are no bids.
Okay, does anybody have any unfinished business? Mrs. Skidmore?
I just need to make a brief report on the Kenton County Alliance meeting. Diana O'Toole retired. She was actually in charge of the Kenton County Alliance. Our mayor, Jessica Fetty, read a proclamation to make today Diana O'Toole Day in Erlanger. And Diana has to sit out for 3 months, and then she can reapply to come back and be the coordinator again, and that's probably what she's going to do.
Thank you, Ms. Skidmore. Mr. Hermes?
Also under unfinished business. I understand there is a woman that has put together a presentation regarding the number of city council members, and I believe we're going to try to organize that presentation for the committee meeting as well on the 18th.
All right, we'll have it added to the committee meeting. Anybody else? Unfinished business? Any new business? Mrs. Skidmore?
The Administration Committee would like to request the reading of a resolution allowing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Department of Rural and Municipal Aid to be eligible for municipal road aid funds. And this is a requirement. So everybody just has to say yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Any other new business? All right, let's move on to legislation.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Erlanger ordinance numbers 2469 and 2475, and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2018, and ending on June 30th, 2019. By summary, is that there is an attachment that was sent via email, which shows the struck-through sections as what is amended, and also shows what the combined totals are. This is a second reading and does require a roll call vote.
Okay, do I entertain a motion that we adopt this ordinance as read? Mrs. Pitts and Mrs. Reckers. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely, Ms. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hermes,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, motion carried.
Next, we have an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, adopting a budget for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2019, and providing that no money shall be expended by or on behalf of the City of Erlanger except in accordance with that adopted budget pursuant to the requirements of KRS 91A030 and KRS 83A. You can see attached is the combined operating budget that shows the revenue coming in and the expenses coming out. And this also is a second reading.
Do I entertain a motion that we adopt this ordinance as read? Mrs. Reckers. Mr. Cahill. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hermes,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely.
Okay, motion carried.
Next, we have an ordinance establishing an economic incentive and grant for small businesses to remain in the City of Erlanger and make capital improvements to their buildings through facade and exterior improvements. Currently budgeted this year will be 10 grants of up to $5,000 each, and they are matching funds. And you can see what the eligibility is. The grant qualifications are listed in the second page, and just briefly, no eligible business shall receive a grant established under this section without first certification by the Economic Development Director that the proposed aesthetic structural improvements are qualified for the grant. An eligible business is a business that is, and we changed this a lot, so we made this 10 years, and they have to be in business and proof of operating in the City of Erlanger for 10 years. There has to be an explanation of the improvements. They have to have proof of ownership of the building or business, an explanation for how the improvements of the business meets any of the following factors, whether it directly increases future revenue job creation in the city, significantly decreases blight within the city, the business's aesthetic and structural improvements will significantly increase the property tax value, and also list a commencement date of the structured, of the aesthetic improvements and the anticipated cost of the proposed improvements and the amount requested by the business. This is just a first reading.
Okay, I ask Ms. Hoffman to please note in the minutes the first reading of this ordinance.
Finally, we have a resolution adopting and approving the execution of a municipal aid co-op program contract between the City of Erlanger and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Department of Rural and Municipal Aid for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, as provided in the Kentucky Revised Statutes, and accepting all streets referred to therein as being streets which are a part of the incorporated city, and the city's apportionment of the Municipal Road Aid Fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 is in the amount of $362,569.02. And that does require a motion and vote.
Do I entertain a motion that we adopt this resolution as read? Mr. Cahill, Mr. Hermes? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any announcements this evening? It's a new part of our agenda. All right. Do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Mr. Nicely. Mr. Meyer. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good night, people.